I, a name that still exists. The name Richard Hale still appears in old city records, contracts, property deeds, meeting minutes. To some, he was a visionary. To others, just another man who arrived early to a new era. But among the older residents, there is another version, a quieter one. They say Richard Hale was a man who never learned when to stop.
Prologue: How the story is told. There is an old belief among the northern peoples. They say the Wendigo is not born in the forest. It is born when hunger no longer hurts, when a man consumes more than he returns, when he begins to see people as resources, when the world becomes something that owes him more. That is when something starts to watch. This story is not ancient. It began only a few decades ago, and even so, very few people like to tell it. A name that still exists. The name Richard Hale still appears in old city records. Contracts, property deeds, meeting minutes. To some, he was a visionary. To others, just another man who arrived early to a new era. But among the older residents, there is another version. A quieter one. They say Richard Hale was a man who never learned when to stop. 2. Before the hunger. In the beginning, there was nothing wrong with him. Richard was approachable. He greeted employees by name. He ate dinner with his family whenever he could. His company started small, a rented office, second-hand desks, unreliable machines. People remember that time with a certain warmth. They say there was laughter. They say there were plans. Back then, no one spoke of hunger. 3. When appetite changes. The first changes were too subtle to alarm anyone. Richard began arriving earlier, then leaving later. Some employees said he seemed focused. Others said he seemed restless. Decisions came faster. Partnerships ended without warning. People were dismissed without clear explanation. When questioned, Richard always gave the same answer. It is necessary. That is how hunger learns to speak. 4. What people began to notice. There are things that never appear in reports. People noticed that Richard's house was dark at night, that his wife stopped attending events, that his children moved away too early. Some said he looked thinner. Others swore he looked larger. Not heavier. Larger. As if he occupied too much space for one man. B. The winter that would not leave. That was when the stranger comments began. A former employee claimed Richard never felt cold. Another said the office felt frozen even in summer. Someone mentioned he never ate during long meetings. He only watched. There were rumors that he avoided mirrors. These are the parts people deny, but they never stop repeating them. 6. The fall. When the company collapsed, there was no spectacle, no headlines that lasted, no public apologies. Only silence. Investigations followed, then lawsuits, then abandonment. People who once sought him out began crossing the street to avoid him. Richard Hale remained inside his house. For months. Perhaps for years. No one knows for certain. 7. What they say happened after. Some claim they saw him walking at night, even in deep winter. Others say lights stayed on in his house for no reason. And there is one story. There is always one. Someone who entered that house after everything ended. They said it was empty. Cold. And far too large inside. And as if something had grown there. 8. The Wendigo. In old legends, the Wendigo is described as a creature of hunger, but the elders say that description is wrong. The true Wendigo does not run, it does not attack, it consumes, it begins as a man and ends as a warning. Whether Richard Hale became something inhuman, no one can say for certain. But everyone agrees on one thing. He never stopped being hungry. Epilogue. Why this story remains. This is not a story about technology or money. It is a story about limits, about the moment desire stops being need and begins demanding everything around it. If this story feels familiar, it is because it is not unique. It repeats itself whenever hunger is given permission to grow. Final words from the narrator. Some stories survive because they entertain. Others survive because they warn. If you have seen something like this before, if you have recognized this hunger somewhere else, then this story is not over. If you know another version, tell it. If you believe these stories should not be forgotten, share them. Some legends do not live in forests. They live among us.